Good evening. Welcome to Slate School. My name is Julie Mountcastle. I'm the head of school here, and I am incredibly privileged to welcome you to our second Third Thursday event. The Third Thursday series is designed for the entire community to share ideas and to hear from amazing humans. And you're about to hear from a particularly amazing human tonight. This is Jane Aronson, founder of Worldwide Orphans, pediatrician extraordinaire, and she has so many lessons to share with us. I might ask her one question and then she will be able to talk and give us so much wonderful wisdom. I'm really happy to share that with you tonight. So, without further ado.
I want to actually just add something here, which I think is very important, and that is that Jennifer, who's sneakily sitting over there, quietly there, so cute. We know each other a long time. You know, it's probably 12 years. How old is Unite for Sight now?
20. This is our 20th year.
So I may even be longer than that. I always forget those things. But I've been part of Unite for Sight for a long time, and I've known Jen a long time. And so that I got this wonderful opportunity to watch her be married, have children, 3, and create something just amazing. This is a magical place. I'm stealing Julie's word. I'm sure it's Jen's word as well. And so these relationships, I make the point that someone asked me the other day this very interesting phrase. I mentioned my schedule, and it's a friend of mine who said, "So what's going to come of that?" I love that phrase. Don't you just love that? I want to throw that phrase out in the nearest garbage. You know, that to me is like, well, so why must anything come of anything? But also, everything comes from these moments. Finally, that's what's so great about this. So I think that what happened to me once I got involved with Unite for Sight was that I could grow in my work in global health. I could have a platform. I was offered an opportunity to give innumerable workshops and presentations, and as a result I met probably, you know, when you think about it, how many people are in the auditorium, at the theater, at the Schubert, and all the other classrooms, I met hundreds of people who really wanted to meet others so that they could learn about their work and grow their work. And we were all incredibly eager, just hungry for each other's company and for the sharing. And I had that opportunity. And then, which was really amazing, was then, look at here, we're at Slate. What does that have to do with Unite for Sight? Well, actually everything, because Jenny was busy growing and developing her vision about a lot of things, not just the global concepts around helping people maintain their sight or recover sight. It developed into a worldwide famous global health conference that involves all aspects of health, psychosocial issues, education, and it covers the territory in very special ways. And then, because Jennifer became a parent, then she began to understand more specifically all the wonderful aspects of how we help children really love learning. That's what she wanted. That was her vision, for her kids to love learning. And she was looking for those opportunities, and it wasn't necessarily in the place that she wanted it to be. And so again, she advocated and built Slate. And so Slate, I don't know if you know that history, but I like to share that with people, that Slate really is like many great visions. It comes from many stages of development, human development, that has to do with adult development. And I'm going to talk a lot about that. I'll intersperse things about development. And so my being here is really the result of a lot of organic steps that are very a part of children's education in their life. Organic steps towards enjoying learning, grasping the concept of community learning, helping one another learn, developing really a core body of principles of friendship, social interaction, bonding and attachment. And most, I think probably you might be shocked by this, but restorative justice comes to mind for me. I think we're here actually in an environment that is about social justice and peace. And there's a lot of research now about how we all need to develop the tools for restorative justice in our communities, our schools, our places of worship, our places of business, corporate, and it needs to be spread around the world because peace is the most important thing for the planet. We were talking about this planet, and of course what's great about Slate is that this is an environment that is truly teaching children about the importance of the earth. Like tonight I was a little fritzed out because Julie ordered me some nice Italian dinner. Well, first I had a tuna fish sandwich, carrot. Brett advised me that I should go to Bagelicious. I'm embarrassed to say that word. And I was embarrassed to be in that mall, because this is a small town and the mall is like the size of a mall that might be in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. But I got my sandwich, and then of course I was extremely challenged about the fact that recycling and everything about recycling is at the heart of Slate. I mean, you know, the children have a ceremony for the compost. So there I was, like, worried. I brought my garbage into the building. And I've left it here, by the way, because it can't go anywhere. It has to be sorted out tomorrow. Because I think Brett, did you already take that stuff out today? Somebody took out some of the stuff out, so I didn't make the cut.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, and then I ate my dinner. I had gnocchi. It's delicious, thank you. And then, of course, I left that in the refrigerator. So I'm definitely not following the rules about taking care of the planet Earth. But I'm at least illustrating to you how admiring I am about all the aspects of this school. So I came here for the first time.
Before we opened.
Yeah, before you opened, exactly. And I've been I was honored by it. I mean, there's been little snippets of opportunities for me to chat about Slate as it became. And I'm so appreciative and grateful for those opportunities to some pretense of me knowing something about anything. And so it was really lovely because now I came today and I was supposed to come and just speak at 6. And then I realized early in the morning, I guess even last night I was thinking, I was going to come early, but then I thought, I really need to be here because I need to see the kids. Mm-hmm. I hadn't seen the kids. The most amazing experience for me actually was when I was on premises here and saw the building being finished and was privy to the gardening, the planting of the seed. Right. And I was so admiring of the fact that the chief engineer was a woman, a young woman, and my son is in engineering school, my youngest, and I just get enough of this incredibly dynamic young woman who really had Slate's vision totally in her mind in every detail. But there were no kids on the premises. But I heard I was on the seesaw.
Yeah, inaugurated.
Right. And then I realized that I should be here and see the children and see what's going on with them. So I spent some time today, and I have to tell you, it was breathtaking. Now, I have a background that will probably explain some of my wonder, because I'm displaying characteristics of wonder, and that's what Slate is all about. I called it curiosity, but wonder is just so much more poetic. And I've lived a life of wonder. I am a child just like the children here at Slate for sure, and would have been as happy as a lark as I was today, talking to the 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, and appreciating them in so many ways because I am a pediatrician and a former educator. So who am I? I should probably say something about that.
Talk about your journey, Jane. Your very interesting journey. You've done a lot of amazing things, and all of them so well.
Well, it just reminds me that this is a good opportunity for all of you, especially as the new year begins, and Happy New Year to all of you, that your life is precious. Everyone in the room has a story and everyone has a journey. And it's very precious and unique. And that's what your children are learning. They're learning, they're on a journey to learning, and they're actually beginning that process that I'll talk about for myself. I always, always loved knowing about things in life from the time I was little. And I have very early memories of being very engaged in activities, self-absorbed and then absorbed with friends and family about learning and doing, particularly doing. I just never had a non-busy moment in my growing up. I just was a busy gal in all ways. And I was eager to, every day, to create community. I lived in a small community first in my father's neighborhood, where my father had a grocery store in South Jamaica, Queens. And all the friends I had there were kids in the neighborhood who were all from diverse backgrounds. Primarily African American children, Sonny and Eugene, who were my best buddies, who curiously had pink palms and dark tops of their hands. And that was always fascinating to me, and I always loved Sonny's hands so that I could see and turn them. And my father taught me to love that world and that environment. I lived there for the first 3 years of my life with my mother, my father, my older brother. And I started early on in my business activities by assisting my father. He would go to visit the homes. He did home visits. My father was not just a storekeeper selling slices of bacon and potatoes bagged in little brown bags. He was a social worker who was hell-bent on helping the people in the community to feel comfortable and independent in their lives, even if they were on public assistance. He was very invested in their well-being. So I would go with him for home visits, and he would take me into people's homes locally, and he had a little book that had the little white pages with lines and the rings, the little metal rings, many of them, not just the 3 that we did in high school at one point in time, but little ones, and it was bound, and then he would, with a pencil, he would have all of their food orders and how much each item was handwritten, and the totals and the subtotals, and when the checks from the government were available, then my father would prioritize who needed a visit, and he would personally go and take me, and we'd walk up the steps into these homes. The cockroaches would scatter. I learned to be very tolerant of insects early on in my life. And we'd sit in the kitchen, and they would make my father a cup of decaf coffee. In those days, that was Postum or Nescafe. Postum, I think, was some kind of grain or something or other. That wasn't even coffee, I don't think, or maybe partial. But it was awful to me. But they would make him just what he liked, and I would sit on his lap, and he would talk with them about what was doing in their jobs, or their daily activities, and then he would ask them, what do you think you'd like to pay? What do you think you'd like to pay? Who asks that? Anybody ask that? What do you think you'd like to pay? He was amazing. And then they would just say whatever it was. I mean, it reminds me of that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, right? When George has maybe $2 left in his hands and he's dancing around the room because he saved the building and loan, right? Yeah. My father was exactly like that character. And he might take $5, $10, $15, whatever it was. But that was what I learned. I learned at service. The message was loud and clear. That was a loving, connecting, attaching sort of moment. And my father was taking care of our family, as far as I knew. And he was also taking care of the community. And other than that, though, I had other members of my family who were as well about service. So my, sharing with you today is that I clearly had a destiny. My destiny was to do service. And it wasn't through a church or a religious network in a way, although I'm extremely spiritual, and I, as a Jew, probably know more about Jewish history than most people I know, because I love history. And so what happened at that time in my life was that I also discovered that there were other people in my family who were of service. My great-uncle Joe was an infectious diseases specialist who treated the Native Americans of the Central Plains for tuberculosis using the BCG vaccine, which actually is having some bit of a comeback, interestingly enough, just from reading about it. But he and his buddy David Stein did some studies in the 30s to look at the efficacy of BCG, and clearly what happened there was that it wasn't as effective as one might have thought, and likely there was some mitigating issues that probably included poor nutrition and alcoholism. But it was discovered by those studies that we wouldn't use that vaccine to treat or to prevent TB. We would use that vaccine perhaps in other countries, which is what happened. And as a result, my uncle's research was really quite useful and very, it had a great impact on healthcare for Indians long term. And I wanted, when I knew about Joe, I just wanted to be like him. And so my first time discovering that I would be a doctor was when I was 3. My parents took me to Wayne, Pennsylvania, where my uncle and his wife, Charlotte, lived. And Joe was a very sweet and lovely man. Had a shock of white hair, like this big comb with a little product in it. Wore a bow tie and a crisp white shirt. And corduroy pants, either gray or brown, with cuffs. And moccasins. My father wore moccasins too. And Joe took me by the hand, he had soft hands, and took me out to the well on the property. Wells are scary things for kids, 120 feet or more, down dark, with some kind of bucket, and it looks like, God knows what would happen to you if you fell in there. That would be the end, right? Scary. But Joe was teaching me a lesson, took me by the hand and walked me down. And he said, and in essence, he described for me that there's a well here that has a secret, lots of secrets. It's a nice well. It holds secrets. And there's secrets for you. So let's go see it. And we walked to the well, and he lifted me up. Very scary, I still remember. Dark. He said, so you're going to be a doctor, like me. That's what it seems to be. Did you know that? And I was 3, I said, yeah. And I remembered different pieces of it, but I never forgot that day. And that was my destiny. It was planted. But so many pieces of it were planted through my dad, through that community, and then reinforced throughout my life. And so I did become a physician at 31, but before I became a physician, I was a school teacher for 10 years. I grew up in a very interesting time, as we all grow up. You're growing up in interesting times. All of you have your generation of tumult, all kinds of changes. Everyone has it. It doesn't have to be different. It's just what it is for you. And for me, the time I grew up in was a time of war and violence and ambition and vision and friendship and love and exploration about gender and sexuality and also sadness and hard times to be one's own self. I became emancipated early in my life, even though I grew up with fairly well-to-do parents. But by the time I was 18, I didn't want to be under their jurisdiction. I was a rogue, but they didn't approve of me, so it was equal. I didn't approve of them, and they didn't approve of me. And so I went on my way and became completely independent, took care of my own education, and then I went off to med school at 31. It just took a little bit of time. I was definitely on that very slow track to getting places, but exciting and always believing in myself, but having to deal with those around me who really didn't believe. So that was difficult. And so belief and trust in children is an incredibly important part of growing up. It's really not easy. I have 2 children through adoption. My sons are one to be 20 in a couple of months and another to be 22 following. And the youngest was adopted from Vietnam at 4 months of age, and then my oldest was adopted from Ethiopia at 6 years of age. And both my children are very nice boys. They're just amazing. I'm completely enthralled with how sweet and good they are. And I stay away from them as much as possible. I have good advice from my 3 best friends who are cousins, men, who I went to immediately upon seeing that I was not successful with any kind of too close behavior. And they said right away, it's very nice, you're very loving, you're good, but you gotta remove yourself. You gotta have some distance from your children. I said, so is this just for boys? Or is this also for girls? They said, well, we don't know about girls because we don't have girls. So we're just talking about boys. But I actually think that I would say that there's worth to the statement that distance from children in general is very good, and it has to be something you create based on the child's needs and your needs. But it's a good way to remember that children need space, just like your partners in life, whether marital partners or boyfriends and girlfriends or whatever. Everyone needs space to individuate, to become their own person. And I saw that today. I'll make many references to Slate, in that what I saw today with the children is I saw a lot of room, tremendous amount of room was happening for them. Something that I don't recall happening in my day. You know, occasionally I had some teachers who gave me a little room, but not that often. It wasn't the teaching, but clearly you should know. It's my perception, I think I'm right here, that the children really had a kind of nice shadowing and really a nice, like you could just feel, I was with Brett and Julie, you could just feel them near, you know? They were near, but they were also incredibly respectful of the children's activity and their own feelings and their own energy. And I got it. I felt so relaxed. I felt like this is better than, I'm not a person who's ever taken any pills in my life, except my blood pressure. I take that every day. But I've always been, I'm very afraid of medication. I'm definitely an organic pediatrician, and was from the very beginning. The only thing that was important to me was to treat strep. And if some child had, you know, a serious life-threatening illness due to cancer or something, that certainly was the way I went. But I was very clear to keep my distance and allow lots of healing and space. But I really have to tell you that what I learned from my cousins was just so powerful. And it still is a part of my everyday life with my children and in counseling people about their children, and I felt it very strongly here at Slate. And I hope that you'll continue to learn more about how you parent. I'm not an expert. I always tell people, I think I told Julie tonight too, I'm not sure about my parenting. Just not sure. I'm not confident. I'm confident about a lot of things. I think I'm a great doctor. And how I say that is because of something I said to the American Express guy this morning. I got stuck in a really incredibly intense 52-minute discussion with Amex and 4 different representatives over nothing, but I prevailed. And at the end, this guy Sean with ID number 889-4273, he's going to get back to me. The reason I bring it up is because what I told him is when he was nice, because the prior 3 were not smart nor were they nice. Truthfully, they were not nice and they were not smart. And I don't suffer fools. That's a part of me that I don't know how much that'll change. So what I said to him is, Sean, I'm a doctor. And what you did with me just now was exactly what I do with my patients. You listened to me, and I think it was genuine. And then you helped to see that I was right and you were wrong. And he laughed. He said, yes, you're right. And that's because I had done my homework. Because like what Julie explained was the kids are in projects, right? And I learned about their projects. There's a project about coffee. There's a project about, let's see, I'm trying to remember, Jane Goodall, Mr. Rogers. We have to talk about that. Let's see, roses. Deccan Plateau in India. Where the hell that is? And I was really, really pissed off that I didn't know where that was. But I didn't say that. I just said I didn't know.
And that was powerful.
Yeah. That's Mr. Rogers. That was. Mr. Rogers was famous for saying he didn't know. And that was great strength. So, and other topics, I mean, there were some others as well.
Ballet.
Ballet. Was that the Cosette? Ballet. So, and they're listing their questions, right? Because they're about wonder. So they're listing their questions. And I thought to myself, wow, this is just incredible what's going on. It was just powerful because this was really my life growing up. As a kid being curious, I just had a million questions. So I said to Sean, I said to him, it was really an amazing moment. Like, when I'm a doctor, it's not a question I won't ask. There's not a person I won't talk to, a specialist or something I will access, books, research. There's nothing I won't do to get to the bottom of a problem that's medical, that's dear to my patients, small, medium, and large. And I said, you behaved just like I behave when I have a puzzle. You were willing to listen and get to it. And I'm so appreciative. I got emotional about it because it is something that we have to fight hard to find. That is what's going on here. Good education is about really researching, teaching kids to really get to the bottom of things so they can come up with their own answers. The creative ways to figure out problems. The bridge you're building in the classroom. How incredible is the bridge? Well, in fact, I have a program in Vietnam with youngsters who were plucked from the street, homeless kids living in the street, living with HIV, beautiful, beautiful young Vietnamese kids in Ho Chi Minh City, who we plucked and they were placed physically in the city youth center, which was really like just a prison. And then we helped the center figure out vocational programming and education for the kids, and we got the kids into treatment for HIV, and then we taught them critical thinking. These are kids who are undereducated and without opportunity, but all bright and just lovely kids who are now wearing, the most cute, sexy clothing, because they can pick stuff out because they're working. And I came back after a year when they were looking like schleppers, and the first thing that we always cared about for orphan children was that they look good. My board hated me for this. This was one of the beginning of me not getting along with board members. If anyone here's a board member, don't tell me. So, I felt strongly about the mission of the foundation, particularly that if we were going to discover things about orphans and find partnerships in the community to provide psychosocial support, education, and medical care so that the kids could be independent at some point in their lives and go on and have great lives and not lives that were destined to depression and inopportunity. And I felt that they should look good. And I always wanted the kids to have a proper opportunity to learn how to make choices about fashion. And we would take them to Shola Market in Ethiopia, in Addis, and the girls and the boys would have an opportunity to pick clothes. And there were a lot of kids who were already having issues around gender. Right there in Ethiopia, a crime against mankind from a culture like that. But these kids were amazing. They were clear. They had questions about gender, and they were going to pick things out that weren't matching up with that they were a girl or a boy. And that came up in the market. But we took all the kids to the various markets in different countries. And we had a budget, and we had them choose, even with a backpack, shoes, socks, whatever it was, anything that involved how they would see themselves. And we had mirrors. And we wanted the kids to be proud of how they appeared, and because that gives this mirror image is so powerful for all of us, and it really helps mental health so much for youngsters who are really feeling so lonely and abandoned. It's the first step towards feeling part of things. Feeling cool is really powerful. So back to research, because that was a kind of a piece here where the projects then lead to this process. I love these threads, I'm still able, at my age of 68, I don't drop the ball too often. People are thinking, when's she getting back to that? I sat with someone the other day who's my literary agent, who's 85. She didn't drop a single ball. I wish she had. But what went on in the project, which was so incredibly powerful also, was that the kids were enfranchised. They're making their list, they have their questions, they know their topic, and now they're these guys are gonna go back and gather books. You're gonna purchase books. You're paying for books. Part of the curriculum. And those books will be the sources of amazing information that then will answer the students' questions. And they'll be in those books at those ripe old ages of 6, 7, and 8, and they'll be reading those books. And they'll be reading them quite well after a while. Of course, I made a very silly little remark at one point. You remember what I did? I said, I used the G word. Google. So I
thought we were pretty good with that.
well, thank you. I thought you thought I was a little. Was I?
No,
Was
well,
I?
I think I said, once you're an adult, using Google's not such
That's
a
okay.
bad thing, right?
Well, yeah, but I felt in a way I might have betrayed. I was definitely a little bit, rogue.
I think the kids looked at you like, they looked at me,
Yeah.
Right? Right? Because I'm, like I am like, totally, just so you know, I don't have time to buy a book. And I'm everywhere with the G. I'm like I mean, even today, I think to myself about what I learned about education as a teacher. I had such an incredible experience as a teacher in both public and private school, and I really was always looking things up, and I was reading. But the advent of the iPhone and the computer, I have become a maniac with looking stuff up. So there was something that I really wanted to share with Julie, and that was this British model of education, which is called Summerhill. And in my day, there was a book about Summerhill, and it was really like outrageous, you know, too revolutionary. It was definitely, don't mention it. But I think that Summerhill has, you know, has flavors, and always has, and has been around a long time. And there's lots of that in every culture. It's not just British, but I was busy Googling it, and then I was doing a screenshot. I love a good screenshot.
And the kids were watching it.
Well, I did that.
Yeah, that was totally subtle. That was outside.
Okay,
Yeah, that was like, no.
So back to the things at hand. There's an expression in French from a very famous short story. Guy de Maupassant used a phrase in French called "revenons à nos moutons," which is returning to the sheep, which is a piece of a play, a story and a play, where the person gets crazy off track, like down the bunny trail, and the judge has to say, "Revenons à nos moutons," which is, let's get back to the sheep that were likely stolen. You can look it up, you can Google it. I'm not crazy. So, I think you get the drift. I mean, I think you can put it together. I don't like to ever tell any story the same way. When I taught school in public school, there were 5 classes every day, and I knew right away I was never going to teach whatever it was. If it was the planets, electricity, anything about biology and chemistry, I was never going to teach that class the same way that I taught it the hour before. Because it just means that I'm not actually on the ball thinking about the different ways that you can express and bring ideas together, because there's so many different ways, and there's so many different learners. That's what I learned teaching. In the 10 years that I taught, I learned a lot about different kinds of learning. And I also really became very reflective about the fact that I was terribly learning disabled as a youngster, and there was just nothing there except, I'm sorry to tell you that your child is likely, you know, mildly mentally retarded. And that's what people would be told. Or maybe your child is deaf or has some visual impairment. Maybe your kid's blind. I mean, there was always a quick answer that was highly judgmental and not based on any facts or investigations to begin with. And so my parents were told that I was slow, that I probably could make up for it by just working harder. And my mother told them, and she did. My mother was wild and loud. My mom died at 97 on December 26th, and I had family and friends come in this past Sunday for a little memorial, and I had nothing in common with my mother, actually, but I did know all the good things that she did for me, and we talked about different things, and other people. It's wonderful these days, you know, you get together. We went to the graveside, we did the Jewish thing, and did Kaddish, and then we went to the pizza place, which I love, in town, and we had pizza. And then we talked about my mother, and one of the things that I talked about, which is very germane to you tonight, is about advocacy. And my mother was rude beyond belief, and angry, and so incredibly vocal about anything that would lessen my opportunities. Because she clearly felt as if she was me and I was her. We were so connected at the hip that I represented her, and she had that intensity of defense. And she took me with her when she killed each teacher. So I sat outside on the couch and listened to her berate, demean, and contemptuously destroy any teacher who dared to not be nice to me. Now, I was a very good kid. You might imagine that already. I was so good. And still am very vulnerable and good. And so, you know, what was hard for me was to reconcile all that. It was just incredible. She was beautiful, fashionable, always late to a school meeting, but appropriately late in that when she came in, things didn't start right away, but it was just the right moment that everyone could see that my mother was dressed so perfectly it was impossible to even get near it. It was really amazing. And a hat as well. Like almost British, with a pin. But then she would really be very focused on the advocacy part, which is so important in education across the board. You cannot advocate enough for your children. You just cannot advocate for them enough. In fact, when you look at the mission and vision of this place, it comes from advocacy. Jennifer was eager to advocate for her children. 2 already were around who needed advocacy. Good boys, but not finding the right environment. And then 1 to come, who will now have an environment waiting for her. I saw Pearson today, it was so sweet. Mr. Rogers has quite a topic. So advocacy is something that then comes into my life. Obviously, look how the pieces fall. So I might have wanted to be a doctor because I'm a person of service. My father gave me that, my Uncle Joe. And I wanted to be a doctor, like a science doctor, which I am because of Joe. But advocacy came into my life because of my father advocating for the clients, right? But my mother was an amazing role model for just endless advocacy. And I needed it. Teachers were tough. Teachers were wrong. Teachers were uneducated about how to take care of children who might have a different perspective. And so what were you going to do? Come in there and say, I noticed you didn't have a good perspective. You couldn't talk to them. Even today, I have friends who talk to me all the time about their children and problems that occur in school in cities all over the United States. And they ask me all the time, what would you do with this? What would you do with that? And they describe defensive teaching. That is the message they describe, defensive teaching. That just can't be. Teachers cannot be defensive. The child is always right. It's the child who's the center of the piece. And it's the child's needs that must be discovered. We've got to help the child discover who they are. And that may be very complex. It could be involved. There might be the need for experts to help in that. But really, you as the parents become experts in who your children are. And if you step back a little bit, they declare who they are. Even if you aren't that happy about that. And I take the model of my work globally, that is really what we took on abroad. I really wanted to take all the things that I learned as a kid, being a kid and being the child of my mother and father, and being in my world growing up from 1951 through till the 70s. And I wanted to use that as a model, as a plan, for how I would address the needs of very poor children, abandoned, vulnerable children who had been abused. And I wanted the same for them. And it wasn't just about how they looked in their clothes, it was what we did to understand what does trauma do to children? What does stress toxicity do to children anywhere in the world? Whatever diverse population we engaged with, we wanted to know what happened to kids who were poor, in the street, living with HIV, or having been experiencing sexual and physical abuse, neglect. Look at what the world looks like now in terms of the numbers, the millions of children and adults who are displaced, refugees. Our world is extremely confusing because of displacement. That is a real fact that is not something that we experienced prior. There's too many numbers and too many vast places where people are living without support and who are truly displaced without support. And it's an overwhelming problem. So what I'm saying to you is the model here is a model that could be anywhere. It's not just a model for North Haven or for middle-class families. It's a model for what is equitable. My model for any care for children is about equity. Gender equity, diversity equity, any equity you want to use. It's about all getting a similar view. Look at these kids, look at this child, figure out what the needs are, special needs, regular run-of-the-mill needs, characterize each of those kids as an individual, and provide them with the services they need through partnerships in countries which may appear not to have much, but you wouldn't, when you go to the Global Health Conference, when you go to Unite for Sight and you meet people from all over the world, people are doing great things everywhere. I mean, it's really amazing. People are smart. And I've met so many wonderful people. As a result of going to Unite for Sight, I'm involved with distressed children. I mean, who wouldn't love Ethan Hoke, who himself has vision impairment, but has organized a not-for-profit that works to destroy child labor in South Asia. I mean, the man is a god. And his group that he brings together, and I go and speak for them every year. I don't speak about much, except I try to give them a few minutes of inspiration because the people he gets to speak are just incredible professionals. But they're using the same model, and all great little organizations that propose to help children all over the world pretty much follow the same blueprint. That's the blueprint that works. That whatever you have here is what should be everywhere for children. That they should be allowed to explore, to do research, to learn to read, to have respect, to look good, and to be able to be community-minded so that they can grow peace in this world. That's the final common pathway for all good education, is that we should have peace. We can't have peace unless we are really working on social justice in the classroom. So where am I now as we cruise into the end for Q&A? I'm no longer actively the CEO of my foundation. I am the founder and will always be. 22 years I put that organization together. And I'm busy using all of the things that I've learned and experienced in my life to figure out ways that I can be useful, because I'm a person of service and I'm never going to stop being of service. We sent 415 service people abroad to do projects in different countries over the years that I ran the foundation. We called them, we nicknamed them, I was a Lone Ranger fan in the 50s, so they called Orphan Rangers. And they did all kinds of projects. And then they created a database of all kinds of interesting information about how children live under many different circumstances all over the world. And that information was really helpful in my hat as an adoption medicine specialist, which I'll finish up with that, because I think that's a kind of a fun piece of who I ended up being. Adoption grew hugely in waves over the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the early pieces in the 80s. China and Russia, Vietnam was in the 70s with the airlift and then came back in again in the 90s, but my interest in infectious diseases particularly made me a perfect candidate to be involved with families looking to adopt internationally. And so I was able, because of my travel and my experience in different countries, I was able to see what orphans looked like in their setting, from the time they were abandoned and then lived in an orphanage and then were adopted. And so I understood where the problems started. How did that all look there? And then they come here, and what do we do to understand that? And that's what WWO really was. Worldwide Orphans was really about that segue for me on international adoption to actually serving children in their countries and understanding their needs, both there for those who not be adopted, right? And for those who might have a home, which of course is the most important aspect of a child's life, is to have a home wherever it is. Children need a permanent home. So I had all those experiences with adoption, and in a way it really sort of opened my mind to understanding so much about who children are and how they think and feel. I think it made me a better teacher, a better doctor, and a better person, and certainly I don't think I would have two lovely sons if I had not gone that route. You know, there's something to be said for destiny, right? And that's how I started, was sort of talking about that. So I'm so happy to be at Slate. It's part of the puzzle for me about, you know, where I'm going on my journey. And so the children are on their journey, and I'm on the same journey, just a little older, and maybe I have some knowledge that will help me with that destiny. I love to write, so I'm writing a book, and I love to speak, so I'm speaking about hopefully things that will be of interest to people. And I also love to be of service still, and that remains to be seen what I'll do. But I really feel like, you know, being invited here is really an opportunity for me to continue to learn about what's going on with kids and education, and also for me to have an opportunity to share what I might bring to the table for the future of education from what I've experienced in other countries. There's so many lessons to learn from how other people teach in different worlds and what's important in other cultures. I really believe that one of the greatest gifts I have all these years is that I've been exposed to so many different cultures, and that I've stolen many ideas.
Yeah.
It's very good to steal ideas. It's a compliment.
Agreed.
What question did you want to ask me? We had this funny thing where
Yeah,
Julie was
no.
going to ask me a question to start everything off.
I didn't need to. Today was fantastic. So we answered every question I had, but I bet other people have questions. So we could open it up for a moment if anyone has any questions for Jane, anything you'd like to know.
Sure.
I know you have some background specifically in play. I'm interested to hear what you would
Yeah,
say
so
about
funny.
that.
You know, that's the billing for tonight.
Right.
But, you know, I thought to myself, it's interesting, but play is a part of everything that we discussed tonight, in essence. And what I saw in the classroom is really, you know, very much about what's going on here. What we did in the foundation was we created these toy libraries, which are, you know, something that came from Scandinavia and Eastern Europe and the Balkans during the 30s of that last century. And it was really a brilliant idea to get kids to really engage in play using all kinds of simple toys that are not with bells and whistles and such. And that the play would be an interactive activity between adults and children, and would be particularly focused on kids who might have delays. Because sometimes kids who have developmental delays in some domains of development, particularly language, benefit from interaction with adults through just by the sheer activity of playing. But the play has to be somewhat scientific, based on testing. And that's what we tried to do. And when I finished up a few months back, we had 62 toy libraries in our 4 countries. And some actually local in the United States as well. They pop up in LA this summer. And they're really, they're unique because they don't demand much space, and the curation of the toy library, which took really 12 years to do, is fairly easy to figure out what you need to do about toys and the science of play. And then, you know, testing kids is also very simple. We use the Ages and Stages questionnaire, but lots of developmental tools. There's many different kinds of developmental tools that can be used that are, you know, very complex or simple, and they can be used by people who can just be trained to do them. So you have a sense for the baseline, and then you can help kids improve their development through interactive activities. I think the most important message from the toy library, though, is about adult play, actually. I think now I'm moved to a very different place in my understanding of the work, and that is that especially when you have adults looking to figure out how they're going to be in their children's lives around the world, teaching adults who may not have any sense, they don't have to have a complicated education or advanced education, but teaching adults to really understand the concept of exploration and play and interaction with children in a setting like that empowers the adult to be more interactive, to use more language, and it can be very powerful, especially in settings where people are not accustomed to using language. And that's really the nature of, unfortunately, poverty. One of the greatest, I think, losses that exists in impoverished communities is that people are not talking. They're depressed. They're beleaguered by lots of complex living issues, and they become isolated. They isolate themselves, so they don't communicate well. They don't talk much. Lots of people. We're really discovering more and more about mental health, and we're looking at how we are all, you know, we're self-isolators. We really isolate because we're ashamed, we feel judged, we're alone. Loneliness will be the death of all of us. Loneliness is the enemy of the people, for children and adults. And so the toy library becomes a place where you're never lonely. It's a place of gab and interaction, and also the peace and quiet and listening. But it's an opportunity, really, and that's what I saw today. I saw a play. It was a project, but there was play in the project. There was interaction, there was exchange, there was a drum, there was a bridge. You know, it was play, and it was really a toy library in disguise, from my point of view, and could be made to be more intentional. It's easy to come up with a toy library. It takes on a different shape and form, but I gave you the feel of it, I hope. I'm sometimes a little too ethereal in my conversation, but it's just the way I am. And I think that I'm hoping that the toy library can still rise in other settings. It's not owned by anybody. It's things that are great ideas are open source. I hope you know that. It's a very important concept. If you don't know it, it's very important to have your own intellectual properties, but there's things that really always have intrinsic to them that they're to be delivered to the public, open source, because we need it. We need it to be happy, to be successful, and it's part of advocating for the wellness of both adults and children. Other questions? Where is everybody? It's so funny. I want to get a sense of the environment. You know, sometimes in the old days when I had to go talk about orphans and how they lived, it was really hard. And I did it because people needed to know. That was very important for them to know that I had been to places that were bad. And I can still talk about that, but boy, what happened to the crowd was rough. People really were sad and upset, and I could hardly collect them back. But, you know, it really was necessary because that awareness, I mean, I go back and I read some things that I've written and things that I've spoken about. It was necessary, although we never allowed the children to be photographed or filmed. I killed many photos and many pieces of film in my day and carried on like my mother. Because I was not going to have that kind of characterization. So how's everybody doing? I mean, it's the beginning, here we are, it's the beginning of the new year. You've already been in school since September, school started. So you're well into, you finished the first part of the year. You're now headed into spring. This will be the first year for some of your children, and the second year for other children. And some new children are coming. I've been hearing about that. The school is young and fresh and exciting. And where are you on all of it? What's happening for all of you? Yes.
So, I think for me, I was a teacher and then a principal prior to staying home with my boys. And I share many of the same philosophies as Slate, which is why I send my son here. Well, I find one of the most interesting and difficult things is there's this constant pull of, I taught in a therapeutic day program with middle schoolers and high schoolers with emotional and behavioral disorders. And, you know, in order to help them leave the therapeutic day program, that was always the goal, was to not have them stay there. There was this balance between structure versus not over-institutionalizing our kids. So I think I personally come from a place of, you know, this very structuredness, and there are benefits of that, but there are also cons of that. And I find this constant pull between being an adult and having my own baggage from your own education and the structure that you have. You want to impose that on these little people, but you know that that's not helpful. So it's this constant dance of back and forth of giving them what they need versus what you want. And I find, you know, having been at Slate, again, we send him here because they don't have that over structure. They have that balance. So I think for me, it's just a constant, you know, thing of how do we carry over what is being done here at home and vice versa. So
Interesting.
yes, where we were, and that's where I am.
Yeah, well, you've had an interesting background. You know, we'll always all struggle with what's best for our kids, and particularly around what we expect them to learn, so they'll be prepared to get into college and go on and have a successful life. So that's going to be, you know, every generation is going to have to struggle with those kinds of things. And the more educated we are, the worse the struggle. We just, you know, we know so much, we think. You know a lot. That's a lot to shoulder, responsibility we have. I've got good news for you. This is how I feel about it, in case you're interested, and that is that children become in spite of our struggles. And I think, you know, the environment of a child learning really has to be based on their love of learning. And if your kid's loving their learning, and it's an environment for the love of learning, they're going to learn everything and more. They're going to have so much information. These kids who are doing these projects, this is like a level that I can't even believe. I mean, you know, I mean, I can't wait for those letters to go to Jane Goodall.
I know.
I mean, but I'm just saying to you, I don't think it's a philosophical thing for me. I really think that it's really something I can see at my age in life and my children where they are. I think that the richness of the home environment, of what you think about learning, is so powerful. You're part of that learning going on. They'll get it all, and they'll be on the march if they love it. The danger of everything we do is when kids don't love learning. That's so dangerous, I can't even begin to talk about it. It's poison when kids come out of school not enjoying learning.
Yeah,
It's just poison.
dampen down. My daughter goes to the public school, and I'm not criticizing it at all because it's great. But she was here on Tuesday just for the hour of the aftercare in Augustine. They were making snowflakes, and Augustine cut up like 10 snowflakes. And so he said to me, "Mom, I couldn't even do one snowflake. Our school does not allow that kind of thing, and I don't know how to do it anymore." And I was like, crumbling inside, like, oh my God, you couldn't make a snowflake? And that's something I never thought. I went to art school. My husband's very artistic. It was something I never thought I'd have to cultivate in any of my children. Is this just the joy of making a snowflake? So.
Yeah, but that's the important thing to remember though, right? We are responsible for our children's learning.
Yeah.
And we can do activities. I mean, I can't tell, I mean, even with my busy schedule, I was a maniac with the kids doing things.
Yeah.
You know, I taught them how to fix things. I mean, I just fixed my refrigerator. It's 34 years old.
Yeah, well, you talk about Googling, we Google everything.
Right?
Unfortunately at home, but we're gonna fix our washing machine is like something
I know how to
weird,
do
and
that.
I'm Googling it.
But I can tell you, the guy came one trip and I said, $400 to fix this
Yeah.
Maytag, which is like fabulous, right? Who can love a Maytag? But I watched him do everything. I took notes, and then I said, Charlie, don't you think I could have done that? It was just the bleach tube.
Right.
I mean, really. He said, yeah, I think you could have done it. I'm not sure everybody could, but please don't tell everybody. I said, I don't know. I might have to. So anyway, but you know, it really is. That's beautiful. What you know, you're in such a good place. You know that. I came in the room. I want some more questions. And I said to Julie, I said, it looks like there's a wedding here. Just missing the aisle. But I really meant it. You know, the chairs, us sitting like this. I felt like, you know, there was something spiritual about the setting and about us being together with these little white chairs. They represent to me something very old-fashioned, the community, and I felt the whole time we were here that it was nice. I just chose not to stand, actually, this time because it's a long day, and I drove a long way. And it's been kind of nice sitting, but I really have to tell you that I really felt like there was a sense of community in the room. Who else has something to say, or, yes?
Something I'd like to share before I excuse myself for a bathroom break, so I apologize. But I do teach in a public school in 6th grade, and what I would like to share with anyone who has a child in public school is that their days, especially as they get older, their days are so insanely structured. And there is no downtime. I mean, it's fascinating, but in an 8-hour day, we manage to jam their schedule. And it doesn't mean that they're learning any more or any better, but it does mean that they have to be doing certain things and being in certain places at certain times. So if I could just say to every parent that that unstructured time at home, and that time to be bored or to explore or to discover or to play is so very, very important after they get off that bus. And I've been noticing too, later and later, the kids are getting off buses. You know, like kids are getting home, you know, at 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock. It's crazy. And of course now it's dark. But so if I could just share with people the importance of a little bit of unscheduling when the kids get home.
Yeah, I try to let her just go up into her room, and she still loves all the American Girl dolls, and she has all these scenes set up, and she does all these drawings of how she wants, you know, the little rooms to be set up, and she does that for like hours. I don't even care. I was like, if you don't do your homework, that's fine. I mean, she gets stressed because, of course, the teacher is not okay with that, but yeah. So
Well, there's certainly a balance, and I try to work in as much play as I can. We made snowflakes today. 11-year-olds were making snowflakes in English class. But, you know, and then we wrote haiku, and it was wonderful and engaging. But the importance of allowing them to play when they get home and to be alone when they need to be alone and to discover and do things, because the day of a young person in public school is a hectic one and stressful.
We have to, definitely stressful, by the way. There's a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
I as a pediatrician, it was just profound for me for all those years. I had so many kids who were so stressed in New York, good schools, and just crazy how many kids were on Xanax and pills and all the rest of it. Very stressful environment, very hard. We've got to do something about that. Any other comments?
Are you still a pediatrician?
I am. I'm licensed to practice medicine in both New York and New Jersey, and I'm actually teaching. But the great thing that's going on for me is that I have a fair amount of choices of what to do. I'm now part of Cornell Weill's medicine. They have a medical school there, and I attended there for 20 years. So I'm starting on a teaching track, and I'm going to teach seminars, a 90-minute seminar on adoption and foster care, which I'm very prepared to teach. But I will let you know that the little guy who's the director of curriculum, he's a sweet guy, tiny guy from Thailand, just amazingly brilliant, made me feel so So stupid, because I had to deliver my curriculum in a format. Like, I've been teaching for a long time, both in medical school, residency, fellowship, conferences. I know how to teach and make a curriculum, but I had to go into like a form of a curriculum so it could be approved by the curriculum coordinating committee, which is really a secret board of directors. Which of course immediately lit me up. Oh, but you'll be happy to know, I did pass. I was pleased. The deadlines, I had to submit stuff to him. I had deadlines for this past Monday. I submitted my last outline of a case presentation, and I was like sweating. I didn't hear from him, and then I heard from his secretary that I'm being scheduled for my session, so I guess I made the cut. So I'm going to be teaching medical students and also participating in pediatric interest groups, which is called the PIGS. Pediatric interest groups. I did give him a comment on that. I said, I really love a pediatric interest group. I definitely want to participate. I like the dates. Sign me up. But could you think of another name? But, so teaching is really so important still for me, and writing a book. I was telling Julie that I'm, that this afternoon, like yesterday or the day before, I'm writing something that's really academic and talking about some historical aspect of my adoption of my young son. And that today was a story that comes from 25 years ago. When I wrote it 25 years ago about when I was 19 and how crazy and wild it was. And I'm sitting in the room over there, typing it up. So lots of different things going on, which you should all look forward to when you become mature. Use the old word. Any other comments or questions?
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, really great. Thanks so much.
And thank you, Jane. I think. I know the people that are coming for the next third Thursday, but
Is that Jordan and
it's Jordan and Jana.
Oh,
but
fantastic.
it's a high bar. She set a very high bar.
They're very good friends of mine. They're incredible.
So
Adorable.
So thank you so much, Jane. Thank you all for coming. Please join us for future third Thursdays and see you soon.